Welcome in YouTube. My name is Ariana Jasmine, and today we will be talking about the shooting that happened in Vermont and all of the implications that comes with that, as well as people's reactions to it and whatnot. So welcome in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to my video and this channel, and let's get into it. Okay, so recently, these 3 students were shot. Apparently, their only crime, reportedly, was that they were speaking Arabic and they were wearing kufiyas, which is the traditional scarf that Palestinians wear. Also, it has become like a resemblance of resistance, right? And the resistance movement that has come out of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and whatnot, from the oppression that they've been experiencing. And so all of them are in critical condition from the last time I checked, but obviously we're going to be going through the details and what everyone's reactions was and whatnot in this video. What to know about the shootings? Police arrested Jason Eaton, 48, near the scene of Saturday's shooting in Burlington, Vermont. So this is very interesting because Vermont is the state that Bernie Sanders represents. And Bernie has been very interesting when it comes to everything happening in the Middle East. He said a lot of interesting things that I was just kind of like, Bernie, what are you saying? Like, Bernie, you good, bro? Bernie Sanders, justice for Palestinians and security for Israel. Already blaring red flag, right? There have been 5 wars in the past 15 years between Israel and Hamas. Again, I hate this wording, that is the war between Israel and Hamas, which honestly, mass media continues to call it that. Like, it's so annoying in my opinion. Wait, are you serious? It doesn't even give the quote from Bernie? Ugh. I know he called Hamas terrorists, like, for sure. I know this for a fact. Okay, Sanders' statement on horrific violence in the Israel and in Gaza. Senator Bernie Sanders issued the following statement today on the horrific. Okay, so this is right when it basically happened. The slaughter of over 1,000 of Israelis by Hamas is a terrorist attack and an unspeakable crime. The bombing of the Palestinian hospital is an unspeakable crime. So he's been very all lives mattery about this, which is what I'm trying to basically get at. But he also, I know for a fact, he labeled Hamas as a terrorist organization. I know that for a fact. Yeah, he definitely cannot say ceasefire. He hasn't called for a ceasefire either. Bernie Sanders has stepped up his calls for a humanitarian pause in Gaza, demanding an immediate stop to Israeli bombing and an end to killing thousands of innocent men, women, and children in the enclave. In some of his strongest words in the 30-day war, the independent U.S. senator from Vermont decried the 7th of October, blah, blah, blah. And then he labeled Hamas as an awful terrorist organization that had slaughtered 1,400 people in cold blood. So, first of all, it's 1,200 people. The IDF walked back and they made a new statement and they said, hey, listen, it wasn't 1,400 people, it was 1,200 people. We also found out that the Israeli military also killed their own people as well when that happened. They also announced that too. But you're also actively labeling Hamas as an awful terrorist organization, right? But the issue is that the average American brain, like an average white man who doesn't know anything about anything and already is kind of racist, right? A little leaning towards the QAnon path. If they see somebody wearing a kufiya and speaking Arabic, they're going to relate that to Hamas. They don't know the difference. And this is the issue. When we continuously point fingers at a certain, group of people and we say terrorist organization, people don't know how to separate, number one, Hamas and civilians. People have just been referring to the Gaza Strip as Hamas, which is untrue. There's over 2 million civilians in the Gaza Strip. About 30,000 of them are Hamas militants. So fundamentally, the majority of the Gaza Strip is not even Hamas, right? Like, that's not true. 30,000 comparatively to a little over 2 million is not even the same when you look at the ratios, right? But also, people have this struggle of separating the two, which is a huge issue. These are the same idiots who attacked Sikhs after 9/11. Absolutely. So a lot of you guys don't know this, but one of the first people that was murdered after 9/11 because of a hate crime, his name was, I believe it was Balbir Singh. He was an Indian man who wore a turban. Do you understand what I'm saying? As a country, we tend to conflate the two. And it doesn't help when our state senators are helping this conflating happen, right? When you just point at people and you say they're terrorists and you don't give any kind of explanation, historical context, you just kind of say, that's a terrorist, they're terrorists, what they're doing is terrorism. You're not helping. And it's so sad because this man is like the pillar of progressivism in America. He is like, when we talk about progressive politics, we think of Bernie Sanders. If this is how the most progressive person in Senate is acting, he can't even call for a ceasefire. He actively calls people terrorists on a regular basis. That's a huge problem. And this is indicative to the greater issue that we have in America, right? But anyways, I just think that these politicians are egging on these kinds of incidents to happen because your wording is so important. You're a person with a platform. And when you word things in a certain way, what do you think is going to happen? So the man, I guess, who shot the 3 people, Eaton, has pled not guilty, to 3 counts of attempted murder in the 2nd degree. The victims were identified by relatives as Hisham Awartani, a junior at Brown University, Kanan Abdul Hamed, a student at Haverford College in Pennsylvania, and Tahsin Ahmed, a student at Connecticut's Trinity College. All 3 remain hospitalized. Awartani was shot in the spine, Ali Ahmed was shot in the chest, and Abdul Hamid was shot in the glute, according to court documents. The FBI last night indicated that they were investigating the shooting following an earlier statement in the information about a potential federal violation would be needed to trigger its participation. So I guess there was a new update as well. Okay, it seems like 2 of the people who were shot also used to take part in Model UN. You know what's really interesting to me too? It's almost as if we have to humanize Middle Eastern people when they get shot in America. If they were white people, you wouldn't have to post something like this. You know what I mean? People would just feel sympathetic with or without this post. So it's just very interesting. President Joe Biden today thanked local and federal law enforcement agencies for their quick work in arresting the man suspected of shooting 3 college students in Vermont. Biden stopped short of labeling Saturday's shooting in the Burlington a biased attack, but said the 3 men were doing nothing more than simply spending Thanksgiving with their family and loved ones. While we are waiting for more facts, we know this. There are absolutely no place for violence or hate in America, period. No person should worry about being shot at while going about their daily lives. Far too many Americans know a family member injured or killed as a result of gun violence. Don't listen. Yes, gun violence is an issue in America. I'm not going to say it's not, but you're completely leaving out the fact that you've been fear-mongering for the past 6 weeks. You have been promoting Islamophobia, and now you're going to blame it on gun violence. Be so for real. Please.
Burlington, Vermont, after 3 college students were shot and seriously wounded Saturday night. 2 of the victims are Palestinian American, while the 3rd Palestinian student is a legal U.S. resident. Police say Jason Eaton, a 48-year-old man who lives in an apartment building next to the crime scene, is responsible for the shootings. Burlington police say the victims, identified by family members as Hisham Awartani, Kinan Abdul Hamid, and Tahsin Ahmed, were in town for Thanksgiving and were leaving a relative's home near the University of Vermont campus on Saturday when their group was confronted by a man they initially described as a white male with a handgun who shot at least 4 times without saying a word.
This has shaken us as a community.
Authorities say 2 of the victims were wearing keffiyehs, a traditional Palestinian scarf, and were speaking Arabic, according to the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee. Some fear the crime may have been motivated by hate triggered by the Israel-Hamas war.
They were wearing the keffiyeh, the traditional Palestinian scarf, and they were not robbed, they were not held up. This was a targeted shooting.
Though it happened near the University of Vermont, the victims don't appear to have a direct connection to the school. Awartani is a student at Brown University, Abdul Hamid at Haverford College, and Ahmed at Trinity College. All 3 are also graduates of the Ramallah Friends School in the West Bank.
We are afraid that it is most likely a crime against Palestinians.
In a joint statement, their family members said in part they are devastated by the horrific news that our children were targeted and shot.
I think Linda Sarsour posted a picture of the shooter. Yes. This is the guy, Jason J. Eaton. He's also being held without bail, which I didn't know either. Interesting. He does look like your local meth head, I'm not gonna lie. He's giving methy vibes.
Savannah, you can imagine there is a small sense of relief in this community, but meanwhile, the community and the victims' families are calling on law enforcement to investigate the shooting as a hate crime. Meanwhile, that suspect is expected to be arraigned in court later today. Savannah?
George Solis in Burlington, thank you.
This is wild.
We are following breaking news. The man accused of shooting 3 young men of Palestinian descent in Burlington, Vermont, has pleaded not guilty to triple attempted murder charges.
Jason J. Eaton is being held without bail following Saturday's shooting. The 48-year-old appeared in court virtually for his arraignment this morning. Police detained him yesterday, less than 24 hours after Saturday's shooting in Burlington. They searched his home and said they found, quote, probable cause to believe he carried out the shooting.
Eaton allegedly shot the 3 20-year-old college students as they were visiting the home of one of their relatives, a visit for Thanksgiving. 2 of the 20-year-olds at the time were wearing scarves associated with traditional Arab dress, symbolizing Palestinian solidarity as well. Police say that one of the victims, quote, sustained much more serious injuries than the other 2. We don't know which one. The Burlington chief of police says, quote, we have a lot more to do.
Even with this arrest, we are still working. There is more investigation to be done, and that includes trying to determine motive. We still do not know as much as we want to know. We are working hard to find out this information, and we are nowhere near the end of this investigation. But we are trying to determine what we have beyond the knowledge that, yes, this person, we have full probable cause to believe, committed this horrible, horrible crime.
CBS News national correspondent Errol Barnett joins us now. He has made his way to Burlington, Vermont, and he's been following this story. Errol, the details are such that the mind goes to a possible hate crime, but that's not what we're hearing so far from the authorities. They are saying we've got to let this investigation play out. So as it plays out, what new details are coming to light about the shooting on Saturday?
Hey there, Meg and Tony. Well, it's interesting. The press conference, having just wrapped behind me, revealed a few new details, not only about the suspect, but the condition of the victims. And I'll start with that. At this hour, we know that one of the victims, Mr. Awatini, was struck in the spine by one of the bullets shot by the suspect. Another one of the young men, Mr. Tassin, was struck in the upper chest. The third gentleman, Mr. Kinan Abdel Hamid, struck in the right glute. So these young men, no matter what the motivation, will forever be changed and marred by what happened to them over the weekend. And what the police have done is they've laid out.
First of all, it takes a lot in the court of law to prove a hate crime. Like, it's extremely hard to definitively prove that something was a hate crime, which is why usually in these kinds of cases, the authorities say, just work with us, we're doing the investigation. We'll let you know with our updates, right? This is very common. Like, it usually takes them a good amount of evidence to be able to call something a hate crime. But with that being said, I mean, it's the mental repercussions that this is going to hold. The person that was shot in the spine, is he going to be able to move? Is he going to be mobile? Is he paralyzed at all? That's a huge question as well. But also going beyond that, these hospital bills are going to cost so freaking much. Like, these are they insured? They're college students. When I was a college student, I didn't have insurance. You know what I mean? Are they going to be able to pay those bills? Not only that, they're literally getting shot on Thanksgiving, in and around the time of Thanksgiving. So that holiday is forever going to be scarred as well. And there's just so much that goes into this that makes this, like, the layers of the onion that just makes you cry when you peel it, right? Like, there's so much that goes into it. It's so freaking sad. I don't know. I would hope that we would do better in this country, but we don't. You know what I mean? And that's not surprising.
Out a scenario in which these young men, after going to a birthday party for an 8-year-old cousin of one of them at a bowling alley, were walking around in the neighborhood when the suspect left his porch, approached them in what was a black hoodie, said nothing, pointed his weapon and fired multiple times. They fell to the ground. Neighbors tried to rush in and help when that man fled. What's interesting and what we learned was that one day later, as the police were recanvassing the area and going into the building where they believe this man was, he met the ATF at his front door and said, "I've been waiting for you." He was visibly nervous. He was shaking. He didn't admit to the number of weapons that were in his home, and he was taken into custody. And when I asked the police chief just a short while ago, considering he said, "I've been waiting for you," and considering he didn't flee the city, what was his general disposition? And he said it was noteworthy that he was almost affect-less when being interrogated and being told that he would be charged with what are 3 potential life sentences. So that's why I think the natural result is...
What the hell does affect less mean? Characterized by a lack of emotion or desire. Imagine shooting 3 people for no good fucking reason other than the fact that they're wearing a keffiyeh and they're speaking Arabic, and just being affectless, having a lack of emotion or desire when someone is telling you that you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail, and you just ruin 3 people's lives for the rest of their life. Kind of crazy.
To say this must have been a hate crime. They're not going that far just yet. One of the prosecutors saying with the evidence they already have, this man faces 3 life sentences, 20-year minimums for each charge.
Yes, so this is the shooter, your neighborhood crackhead.
Faces 3 life sentences, 20-year minimums for each charge. That in Vermont, a hate crime enhancement would simply change what the sentencing might be. But it has shaken this part of the country to its core, for sure.
Errol, we know the U.S. Attorney General commented on the Vermont shooting this morning. I want to play a little bit of what he had to say. Let's listen.
Yeah.
All of us have also seen a sharp increase in the volume and frequency of threats against Jewish, Muslim, and Arab communities across our country since October 7th. There is understandable fear in communities across the country.
I'm not saying anti-Semitism isn't real, because it 100% is, but if this is his response to the Vermont shooting, it's a little bit weird to start off the sentence with Jewish if you're responding to an Islamophobic shooting. Now, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if they just kind of clipped this video from like weeks ago or something, but I think wording is very important. And when we're talking about Islamophobia specifically, or anti-Semitism specifically, like the wording of that is very important. You know what I mean? If I'm talking about stop Asian hate, I'm not going to start a sentence by saying, oh, you know, Islamophobia is really bad, so is stop Asian hate. If I'm talking about stop Asian hate, I'm going to start the sentence off with stop Asian hate. You know what I mean? But I've seen a lot of politicians start off their sentences with something that is unrelated to the issue that they're talking about, and this has been going on for this whole entire past month, and it's a little weird, because I feel like if it was with anything else, they wouldn't do that, you know?
Even as we speak, the ATF and the FBI are investigating the tragic shooting of 3 men of Palestinian descent in Vermont.
Yeah, see, that's weird. The fact that he started the sentence, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia has been rising, but then you go on to talk about an incident with Islamophobia specifically. Do you guys notice this? Like, I think I'm the only one going crazy. Like, I hear it and I'm like, I don't think anyone would do this with any other people but Muslim people. Is it because they don't value our lives as much? I don't know.
That investigation, including whether this is a hate crime, is ongoing.
And Errol, I think the big question is, how long do you expect authorities to take before they can determine that?
It's unclear, Megan, and we certainly pushed in this room to get some clarity on that question. But the point that the Attorney General is making, which is that the climate in the country in which not just those who are of Palestinian descent or Muslim or Jewish, but really all minorities are facing increased rates of hate and harassment, isn't lost on this audience. And there was
The thing that's bugging me is when there's anti-Semitism, they just mention anti-Semitism. They don't say anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This is the case with every kind of hate crime. If you have a hate crime against black people, you say racism against black people or black community. If you have racism against Asian people, it's Asian hate crime. But for some reason, when it has to do with Muslim people, it's like something is always before it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, are you guys trying to keep up this narrative that all Muslims are terrorists or something? Because respectfully, don't talk about an Islamophobic incident if you can't give it its full validity. You're not giving it its full validity if you're mixing it up with other crimes as well, other types of hate crimes as well, right? Like each one has its own position and validity and goes in its own box. You know what I mean?
Another stunning moment behind me when one of the uncles of one of the gentlemen was already at the podium with the mayor, with the prosecutors, and then another uncle just flew in from California and walked into the room, and literally they greeted each other while standing in front of the rest of us to say this is all shock. To them, certainly their relatives and their families feel as if what's happening in the Middle East is a component, that it is a hate crime. It's just that legally speaking, the prosecutors aren't there just yet. But I will just share this note. One of the uncles said, typically we get asked if our relatives back in the West Bank are safe, and that he feels, quote, betrayed by the decision to come to Vermont from the West Bank for these young men who are now forever marred.
Just so sad, honestly.
The manhunt for Jason Eaton came to an end overnight. The 48-year-old was taken into custody in Burlington, Vermont, near the area where prosecutors say he shot 3 young men of Palestinian descent on Sunday.
Are you Jason Eaton?
Yes. This morning, Eaton appeared virtually in a Burlington courtroom for an arraignment on attempted second-degree murder charges.
This time we waived further formal reading or advisement under Rule 5. We waived the 24-hour rule. Mr. Eaton.
I don't understand how anyone could represent this kind of a man. I understand legally in the court of law, every person gets representation, but that's freaking wild. I would never be able to do that.
Eaton enters a not guilty plea to all 3 counts.
The victims attended colleges in Connecticut and Rhode Island. They were visiting.
Listen, this Islamophobia is going to continue to happen so long as we continue to demonize people in the Middle East. This happened back in 2001. It's happening now again 20 years later. You would think we would have learned our lesson, but clearly we didn't. And I just think that as a society, we need to hold much more validity to Islamophobia when it happens. Because this shouldn't have happened. We literally had a 6-year-old child get stabbed weeks before this hate crime happened. Mind you, this happened in the state of where Bernie Sanders is the representative of. Like, that is really, I mean, if you really look at everything that encompasses this case, it's so sad, because it's like you would expect that, number one, we would learn from the lesson where, okay, hate criming against Muslim or Palestinian people is really messed up and you shouldn't do that. But number two, it literally happened in Bernie Sanders' estate. And what would it be like for Muslim, Middle Eastern people, Palestinian people in America, if our politicians did not constantly refer to Muslim, Middle Eastern people as terrorists? If people did not constantly refer to us as terrorists in general, right? I don't know. Like, it really makes you think, you know what I mean? Because words matter. And like I said, the average American person does not know how to separate Hamas and Palestinian people. It all just starts looking like one. And statistically speaking, most of the people in the Gaza Strip are not even a part of Hamas. Okay, Hamas is 30,000. The population in the Gaza Strip is over 2 million. So statistically speaking, the majority isn't even Hamas in Gaza. And it's sad. I hope we get to a place in this country where we don't operate at such a dysfunctionally racist rate. I don't know. It's just so insane to me. But anyways, thank you so much for coming into my YouTube channel. My name is Ariana Jasmine. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment for more news updates like this, and I will see you next time.